Guys, it's been a hell of a month. Reviewing 4 different gimbals from the best manufacturers on the planet. And now, I will be telling you which gimbal is my favorite. Right here, we have the Mosula Air, the Juin Tech Crane, version 2, the Fosse Cam FM145, and the Fei Yue Tek A2000. All of these gimbals have done a phenomenal job of stabilizing and creating beautiful cinematic footage. However, each gimbal has flaws, some bigger than others. And today I'm going to be choosing the one gimbal that I will be using on most of my shoots. So stay tuned, we're going to talk about the basics and the specifics, and we'll get down to the verdict. Let's first talk about the Mosula Air. This gimbal is incredible. You are getting the most for your money. For $600, you are getting the gimbal, dual-handed system, and a fantastic carry-on case. And this is a hard shell case, it's water and shock resistant. Now, along with this gimbal, you are getting an incredible mobile application that allows you to shoot time lapses, and it has other great features like self-calibration, and it allows you to completely change the motor parameters. This gimbal has full 360-degree action, which means that this gimbal uses slip rings just like every other gimbal here, and that allows you to use 360-degree motion in all axes. No limits here. The Juin Tech Crane, this one has the lowest payload capacity of being around 4.5 pounds. It's actually similar to the Fei Yue Tek A2000. Now this is also a great gimbal. This is what we consider the industry standard in today's world. This is the top seller gimbal. No other company has sold more gimbals than Juin Tech. This thing is seen everywhere and used everywhere. But there are some complaints that I have about this gimbal, but we're going to talk about that in just a few moments. Next, we have the Fosse Cam Gimbal. This is a relatively new gimbal, new manufacturer as well, and it allows us to get also that beautiful cinematic and stable footage, but compared to all the other gimbals here, we have a few different shooting modes that all the other gimbals do not have. For example, we're allowed to get that glide cam feel. And by that, I mean we're allowed to manipulate the horizon and get that nice just fluidity and more of that creative shot in our shots. So that's the Fosse Cam stabilizer. And another unique feature about this gimbal is that it has its roll motor fixed at 45 degrees, meaning that there's no obstruction on your LCD viewfinder. That's another feature, again, that none of these gimbals have. And next, we have the Fei Yue Tek A2000 gimbal. If you've watched all of my gimbal reviews, you'll know that the Fei Yue Tek A2000 by far, I think, has the best software built into the encoders. It has the best algorithm, and I feel like it gets the most accurate and stable shots. But does the price justify that? We're going to talk about that in just a moment. So first off, as I said before, you're getting the most for your money with the Mosula Air. However, I did have issues with the upgrading process of the firmware. I actually shot my gimbal, and by that I mean I thought I fried it. So I plugged it into my computer, I tried to upgrade the firmware, I tried to mess around with the parameters. Basically what I tried to do with these gimbals, I tried to break them, because somebody who is going to be buying this kind of stuff and isn't familiar with programming or any of that other stuff, they're most likely going to break their gimbals. So I tried to do that with each of these gimbals. And unfortunately, the Mosula Air failed in that test. As soon as I hooked it up to my computer, I messed around with the motor parameters. There was no default setting to reset the gimbal after I played around with these parameters. So in the end, I managed to completely just destroy this gimbal when upgrading the firmware and changing motor parameters. Luckily, after studying some of the patterns in the programming, I was able to restore the factory defaults to this gimbal, and let me tell you, it took me probably 10 hours to figure that out, and it was extremely difficult to figure that out, and there is not much information in the manual telling you how to do that. So that's the Mosula Air's biggest fault When it comes down to stability, it does a fantastic job. However, when the gimbal is static, it has gimbal shake, which means that if the gimbal is just standing still, you're going to see the camera just shake a little bit. However, I do realize that as soon as we start holding the gimbal, the shake stops. But what if you want to use your gimbal on a little tabletop tripod and just have it fixed in one location? You're going to see a little bit of that jitter. So hopefully they will be able to fix that issue in a future firmware update. Now, out of all of these gimbals, this gimbal has the highest payload capacity of being 5.5 pounds. So you can load up a 5D Mark IV with a 24-70, 24-105, and this thing will handle it easily. The Mosula Air also has one of the lowest battery lifespans, only going up to 8 hours. You can still get some pretty decent time lapses, and 8 hours should be more than enough for a single day's worth of shooting. So keep that in mind. Next, we're moving over to the Juin Crane version 2. This one also comes with a hard shell case, but if we take a look at the Mosula Air and the Juin crane, we'll notice that this case is a lot smaller. That's because it doesn't come with a dual handle system. Now for 550 bucks, you're getting the gimbal, you're getting a charger, and you're not even getting a tabletop tripod. Now the Mosula Air comes with everything that you need. It comes with that tabletop tripod. I mean, the Juin crane doesn't come with that tripod, so you need to spend the extra money, the extra time waiting for that tripod to come in. Now why do we need that tripod? The tripod allows us to set down the gimbal whenever we feel tired. It also allows us to get a better balancing experience with this gimbal, and with all gimbals in general. The Juin crane also has one of the lightest payload capacities, only going up to about 4.4 pounds. I've noticed it sometimes struggle with my Sony A9 and the 16-35 lens. It seems a little bit too bouncy using such a heavy lens, so I'm not getting the most stable footage. Also, when I'm using the gimbal in flashlight mode, I notice that sometimes the panning is really rough. I feel like the algorithm has a really tough time determining what moves I am going to make. However, when the gimbal is static, it does not shake like the Mosula Air. And also, the motors are a lot quieter than the Mosula Air. I forgot to mention this earlier, but the Mosula Air has sometimes an issue with high-pitched squealing coming out of the motors, so that can be an issue if sound is a huge factor for you. So keep that in mind. And usually on professional shoots, sound is recorded separately and not attached to the same rig that you're using. You might not have such an issue with that high-pitched squealing. But if you are going to record audio while having the microphone on the gimbal itself, you will definitely hear some of that high-pitched squealing. So take that into consideration as well. With the Juin crane, we're also getting the best battery life, over 15 hours, easily. That's better than any of these gimbals. So that's a big factor as well. This thing can easily last a few days worth of shooting. Now, with the Juin I was not able to break. The software was fantastic. I tried my hardest to really mess with the motor parameters. I couldn't break the Juin crane. The Fosse Cam, I was able to do that because it uses the Base Cam BGC gimbal software. This is a software not made by Fosse Cam. It's made by a third party and it's used on most professional gimbals. However, if you don't know this software, if you don't know how to use it, inputting your own parameters in the software will most likely result in breaking your gimbal. And I've had this issue happen on the Fosse Cam. So with the BGC software on the Fosse Cam gimbal, I was able to just brick the gimbal easily. So since I'm familiar with the BGC software, I was able to restore the motor parameters and I was able to bring the Fosse Cam gimbal back to life. Another negative point about this gimbal is that it has a plastic handle. Not a big fan of the plastic handle, however, it is very comfortable to hold. But unlike the Juin crane, we're getting that rubberized grip on that plastic handle, so if your hand does become sweaty, it will not slip. And the Mosula Air also has that feature on the gimbal handle. Now, another thing that I don't like about the Fosse Cam is that it has a built-in 10-hour battery. 10-hour battery life is fantastic, but the fact is, you cannot take out the battery and charge it. So the bad part about having an inbuilt battery is that once it dies, you have to wait until it charges. You can't just pop in a new battery. And also, when the battery eventually depletes and you can't use the battery anymore, you're gonna have to send this gimbal in for service, or you're just gonna have to buy a new gimbal. However, this company, Fosse Cam, has the longest warranty time, being 24 months. Everybody else here is only 12 months. So that's another great feature with the Fosse Cam gimbal. And just like any other gimbal here, we have Bluetooth connectivity, meaning that we can hook up our phones to this gimbal, wirelessly control it, and set motor parameters as well. But again, you're using that BGC software, so if you don't know what you're doing, you can easily fry and damage your gimbal. Next is the Fei Yue Tek A2000. This is by far probably one of my favorite gimbals, simply because it has the best algorithm and the best software built into the encoders of these motors. So you're going to get the most accurate stability, you're going to get the best stability, and it's going to look the most fluid. In my opinion, the Fei Yue Tek A2000 is the biggest competitor to the Juin crane. Now, a few things that I don't like about the Fei Yue Tek A2000 is the case that it comes with. I mean, I love the form factor, but it's soft, it feels cheap, and I feel like this handle up here is going to rip and break. We're also getting a little tiny tabletop tripod which can easily break. It's frail, it's really gentle, and by mounting an A9 with a 16-35 lens, which is almost a $6,000 setup, I really don't trust that tabletop tripod. So with this setup, you're also going to have to buy a separate tabletop tripod. So I have a solution for this. I use the PerGear tabletop tripod. You can find the link for it in the description box below. Also, if you're interested in watching the test footage and my full and comprehensive review videos of all of these gimbals, you can check out the links that popped up here in the video. And also with the Fei Yue Tek A2000, you are getting an application for your phone that can easily monitor the motor parameters and change parameters as well. However, with the Fei Yue Tek A2000, you are getting the worst battery life compared to all of these gimbals. You're getting 2 sets of batteries with this gimbal setup here. Each set will give you about 6 hours of battery life. So that should be just enough for 1 day worth of shooting. But don't forget, you get that second set to make it 12 hours. So that's a nice feature there, but I would have just rather had that bigger battery so I wouldn't have to keep changing them out. So what is my verdict? Well, when it comes to battery life and overall ease of use, it's the Juin crane. When it comes down to a better bang for your buck, that is the Mosula Air. And when it comes down to the best stability and most cinematic footage possible, I have to hand it to the Fei Yue Tek A2000. However, if you are a glide cam fan and you want to have that ability to manipulate the horizon, this is the gimbal for you. A lot of people love glide cams, but they hate using them because there's a big learning curve to it. If that's the case, this is the gimbal for you. Now, the Juin crane and the Fosse Cam both have the ability to charge and control your camera. With the Mosula Air, you also have the ability to control your camera, but the charging feature doesn't work for some reason. And with the Fei Yue Tek A2000, you can control the shutter, but not charge your camera. So if I was new to filmmaking, which gimbal would I buy straight off the bat with budget in mind? That would definitely be the Mosula Air. This is by far the most bang you will get for each dollar that you spend. This is the gimbal for you. However, if your budget is much larger, you're a professional filmmaker, you've been doing this for years, the Fei Yue Tek A2000 is the gimbal for you. You're getting the most accuracy and the best stability possible with this gimbal. And I do strongly recommend getting the dual handle system for the Fei Yue Tek A2000 because you will get much better results as well. The Fosse Cam and the Juin crane are both excellent gimbals as well, but there is room for improvement. However, in the future, I'm sure that these two companies will make much better gimbals. For example, Juin has already made the Crane 2. Hopefully, I'll have a chance to review that gimbal in the future. So again, my verdict for beginning filmmakers is to go with the Mosula Air. For advanced filmmakers, go with the Fei Yue Tek A2000. You won't be disappointed. So user friendliness is another very important factor. I felt like the Mosula Air was the most user-friendly gimbal. However, you do have to remember that tweaking some of the motor parameters while having this gimbal hooked up to your computer can be very damaging. So just stick to the application on your phone and you should be fine. The Juin gimbals have the most incomplete app out of all of these gimbals. There's just functions that don't work or missing, and the application itself just seems incomplete. The Fosse Cam Gimbal also doesn't have that user friendliness. It comes with a very complicated application for your phone, and you have to be a professional in BGC software and computer programming in order to understand how to change motor parameters. The Fei Yue Tek A2000 also has a decent application, and it offers you some great options with time lapses. However, you do have to practice using this application in order to get it right. The Mosula Air, you don't need to practice. Everything is perfectly labeled, and I absolutely love that phone application. So hopefully this video has shed some light on what I think is the best gimbal for beginning filmmakers and advanced filmmakers. I will leave the links for these gimbals in the description box below, so make sure you check that out. Don't forget to give this video a big like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel with notifications on. I cannot wait to see what you create. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.